School of our Divine Infinite Being, Central Doctrine. The grand integration of the Chaldean Babylonian epoch into the world's religious practices of the earliest centuries and the mystical numbers 4 and 7.
During the 8th and 7th centuries BC, Babylonian astronomers developed a new empirical approach to astronomy. They began studying and recording their belief system and philosophies, dealing with an ideal nature of the universe, and began employing an internal logic within their predictive planetary systems. This was an important contribution to astronomy and the philosophy of science, and some modern scholars have thus referred to this novel approach as the first scientific revolution. Wikipedia.
We will continue with the multiverse and all the incredible insights it entails after this most important prelude. The Hellenic religions, philosophies, and sciences had an incredible impact on all the surrounding cultures and people to a degree most are unaware of, especially during the earliest times of the Christian rise, which we will delve into further below. What is less known, and something we do not want the students of our central doctrine to misunderstand, is the impact the Babylonian culture had on the entire world just prior. The great syncretism between faiths, cultures, and spiritual practices during the days of the Alexandrian library, with their perennial polytheistic attitudes, was built on the underpinning of this one great culture's system of practices. This influence was so profound that one could say the Babylonian influence was the greatest of all the cultural integrations, by a very large margin. It was a particular sect of Babylonians, the Chaldeans, who were at the center of this great syncretism that penetrated every culture and sect surrounding them.
In classical antiquity, the name Chaldeans primarily stood for the priests of the Babylonian temples. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus compared them with the Egyptian priests, since the word Chaldean was used for members, not only of the Babylonian priesthood, but for all the Mesopotamian sages. Soon enough it became a title of honor for the Greeks who studied in the Babylonian schools. In Hellenistic times, the term Chaldeos was synonymous with the words mathematician and astrologer. Catullus S. Viglis, Chaldean and Neoplatonic Theology.
By the time of the ancient Greek and Roman empires, you could be labeled a Chaldean by heritage or by association with their academia in ritual and divinatory practices. If you practiced astrology, the reading of omens, certain forms of divination, and specific types of ritual magic or theurgy, you were considered Chaldean. If you studied with them in the temples of Babylon, then you would have studied astronomy and mathematics in its highest form, rivaled only by the more cultured practices found throughout the Hellenistic Greek communities. Chaldean Babylonian astrology, with its sophisticated system of interpreting celestial movements, emerged as a significant force in the ancient world. Its principles not only shaped the spiritual and intellectual frameworks of Babylon, but profoundly influenced Egyptian Hermeticism, Greek Platonism, and the Jewish mystical traditions. The Chaldeans built towering ziggurats, which served as observatories where priests meticulously tracked the movements of stars. From the ziggurats, Chaldean priests observed the night sky, recording the positions of celestial bodies and interpreting their influence on earthly affairs. The Chaldeans were the first to posit that celestial events, such as eclipses, planetary alignments, and comet appearances, were omens indicating future events. Chaldean astrologers developed an extensive system of celestial omens, which they used to guide kings and predict outcomes of significant events. Celestial omen, meticulously recorded and interpreted by Chaldean astrologers, guided the decisions of rulers and foretold the fate of empires. This method of divination was captured and integrated during the Greek Empire across the entire Western world, finding its way into all of the religious practices of the surrounding cultures.
The stars and planets, in their celestial dance, embody the divine mind and order, guiding the soul's journey through the cosmos. Corpus Hermeticum, Poimandres.
Hermeticism, a Hellenistic religious and philosophical tradition, absorbed Chaldean astrological concepts and adapted them within an Egyptian context. The Hermetic texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus reflect a synthesis of Greek, Egyptian, and Chaldean ideas, and have influenced the framework of our current astrology. Hermetic texts describe the cosmos as a living entity, with the movements of the stars and planets symbolizing divine intelligence and order.
The soul's ascent through the 7 planetary spheres reflects its journey back to the divine source, each sphere a stage in the soul's purification. Corpus Hermeticum, Asclepius.
In Hermetic cosmology, the universe is seen as a series of concentric spheres, each ruled by a planetary deity. This model exactly reflects Chaldean influences in its emphasis on celestial hierarchy and divine influence. Hermetic texts often refer to the 7 classical planets and their spheres, which the soul must traverse in its ascent to the divine. Hermetic practitioners used astrological symbols and rituals to align themselves with cosmic forces, drawing on Chaldean astrological principles to achieve spiritual enlightenment. We get more into the number 7, its significance, and the spherical influences shortly. The use of astrological symbols in Hermetic rituals was intended to harness the power of the stars and planets, facilitating the practitioner's connection to the divine. Through the sacred rituals and astrological symbols, Hermetic practitioners sought to align themselves with the divine order and achieve spiritual enlightenment.
The stars and planets, in their perfect orbits, embody the rational order of the cosmos, reflecting the harmonious structure of the world's soul. Plato, Timaeus.
Plato's works, especially Timaeus, reveal a deep integration of Chaldean astrological ideas into Greek philosophical thought. Plato viewed the cosmos as a rational, ordered system influenced by the stars and planets. Plato described the universe as a living being, with the stars and planets acting as manifestations of the world's soul. Below, we will get more into his cosmology as being a Platonic school. This cosmology is of great importance, a cosmology that was taken full sail from that of the Chaldeans' original cosmological models.
The celestial hierarchy, with the stars and planets as intermediaries, guides the soul's journey through the material, and divine realms reflecting the cosmic order. Plotinus and Neds.
Neoplatonists, like Plotinus and our own Iamblichus, expanded on Plato's cosmology, incorporating astrological principles more deeply into their metaphysical systems. Neoplatonists viewed the planets and stars as intermediaries between the material and divine realms, influencing human destiny and the soul's ascent.
Ezekiel's elaborate vision of the divine chariot shows remarkable similarities to Babylonian representations of divine thrones and their bearers, suggesting a direct influence of Mesopotamian iconography on his prophetic imagination. Thorkel Jacobson, The Treasures of Darkness, A History of Mesopotamian Religion. The prophetic visions of Ezekiel, especially the intricate details of the divine chariot and its bearers, are heavily imbued with motifs that were prevalent in Babylonian religious art. This suggests that Ezekiel's experiences in Babylon influenced his symbolic representations of the divine. S. H. Huck, Middle Eastern Mythology.
The prophet Ezekiel's vision of the cherubim and divine chariot in the Hebrew Bible shows clear parallels with Chaldean astrological symbols, particularly the zodiac found in Ezekiel 1:10 and 10:14. The cherubim's faces, a lion, ox, man, and eagle, correspond to the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. The Dead Sea Scrolls from Qumran, particularly those focusing on eschatological themes, incorporate astrological symbols and Chaldean influences. The 4 fixed signs of the zodiac in Qumran texts symbolize cosmic stability and are integrated into apocalyptic visions. The signs of the zodiac observed by the community guide the faithful in understanding the divine will and the unfolding of eschatological events. Rachel Eleanor, whom we quote extensively below, points out that the Qumran communities practice very unique forms of religious praxis, deeply integrated with the lineage of the prophet Ezekiel specifically. Their practices were much more theurgic, and although very Jewish in origin, share a lot of the same ideas on accessing the divine realms as those of the later Neoplatonic theurgists. Jewish mystical traditions, particularly those centered around the vision of the divine chariot, Merkabah, reflect Chaldean astrological influences. The vision of the divine chariot in Ezekiel, later expanded in Merkabah mysticism, mirrors the Chaldean ideas of a celestial throne and zodiacal guardians. The divine chariot vision, with its celestial creatures and throne, reflects the structure of the cosmos and the influence of astrological symbols in Jewish mysticism. The Jewish exile to Babylon found far deeper integrations with the Chaldean divinatory practices than any Orthodox Jew would be comfortable admitting. It was a common theme in the Bible and amongst the Hebrew communities to borrow from their neighbors, then reformulate spiritual ideas and claim them to be unique in their system of practice. Not uncommon in general throughout the ancient world, but the Hebrew and early Christian orthodoxy were probably the most culprit. One of the best examples of a Babylonian omen and consequential fate can be found in the book of Daniel in the Bible, a book that was written after the Chaldean Empire was overtaken by the Medes and then conquered by the Greeks. This was written during a time when the Chaldean Babylonians were held in the highest regard in most every known land.
Suddenly the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Then he said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, whom the king called Belteshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." Daniel interprets. Here is what these words mean. "God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians." Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. Daniel 5:5-30.
This is where the famous writing on the wall statement that has permeated our Western culture came from. This was the fate of the king, his death, and the takeover by the Persian Median Empire. This couldn't be any more classic Chaldean Babylonian as an interpretation of an omen, as thousands of these earlier omen practices were centralized on the fate of kings, as you can see from the quote by A.R. George below.
Divination is often described as a means of predicting the future. In ancient Mesopotamia, it was not so simple as that. Divination was a type of soothsaying only in that observed signs were considered to correlate with events that usually had not happened yet. The characteristic formal lists of omens paired off portents and predictions, the former as a conditional clause. If such and such is seen, called a protasis, the latter as its outcome, then such and such will happen, the apodosis. A lunar eclipse on the 15th day of the third month, for example, was paired with a statement predicting the death of a king in a palace revolt. A.R. George, Babylonian Divinatory Text.
The Hebrew dominance over the powers of fate and providence, being the obvious goal of much of the book of Daniel, was clearly not a condemnation of its methods. Although there are different time periods and opinions about divination and omen interpretation throughout the Bible, here Daniel is made chief over the wise men, the astrologers, the diviners. He didn't condemn them. He was in many ways just like them, only following the Hebrew Yahweh instead of the Babylonian Marduk. The books of Daniel and Ezekiel are arguably Babylonian in nature, blended with a foundation in Hebrew liturgy at the time of their writing. Daniel was written in 164 BCE, well into the period of the Greek Empire, where Babylonian practices were syncretized with most every culture and belief within the Hellenistic Greek worldview. Chaldean astrology profoundly influenced various religious and philosophical traditions across the ancient world, establishing an authoritative framework for understanding the cosmos and humanity's place within it. From the Hermetic texts of Egypt and the Platonic cosmologies of Greece to the mystical visions in Jewish tradition, Chaldean astrological principles provided a foundation for interpreting celestial movements and their impact on earthly affairs. This cross-cultural diffusion underscores the enduring legacy of Chaldean thought in shaping the spiritual and intellectual landscapes of ancient civilizations. The numbers 4 and 7 have long held profound symbolic significance across various ancient and mystical traditions. Their importance is deeply rooted in Chaldean or Babylonian cosmology and extends through diverse religious and philosophical systems, including Merkabah mysticism, the Qumran community, Platonism, Hermeticism, and early Christianity.
The Chaldean priests looked to the four directions as the anchors of the world, each bearing significance in the unfolding of the cosmic plan. Gavin White, Babylonian Star Lore. Then he said to me, "Prophesy to the breath, prophecy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breathe from the four winds and breathe into these slain, that they may live." Ezekiel 37:9.
The Chaldeans, known for their pioneering work in astrology and astronomy, attributed great importance to the number 4. This number represented a sense of completeness and stability deeply embedded in their understanding of the cosmos and its organization. They conceptualized the universe as oriented around 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. These directions provided a framework for their understanding of space and were integral to their cosmological worldview. You can see this influence in the 4 winds in the quote from Ezekiel above. Not only this, but the actions of Ezekiel were that of a magus, calling the 4 winds to his aid, a much more Babylonian idea than that of Jewish thought.
In the Babylonian worldview, the 4 elements were seen as the building blocks of the cosmos, each element contributing to the balance and order of creation. Francesca Roxburgh, The Heavenly Writings.
The Chaldeans also identified 4 fundamental elements: earth, air, fire, and water, believed to constitute all matter. This elemental theory underpinned much of their natural philosophy and metaphysical thought, and it was taken into the Greek philosophical work full sail.
The Chaldeans' enumeration of the 7 planets and their meticulous observation of their movements reflects their view of the cosmos as a divine, harmonious order. Austral Sciences in Mesopotamia by Hermann Hunger and David Pingree.
The number 7 held an even more exalted position in Chaldean cosmology. It was seen as a sacred number, symbolizing divine perfection and the celestial order. The Chaldeans recognized 7 classical planets: the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These celestial bodies were observed meticulously, and their movements were believed to influence earthly events profoundly. Each of these planets was associated with a specific day of the week, formulating a 7-day cycle that became foundational in timekeeping and religious practices.
The Chaldeans envisioned 7 heavens, each corresponding to a planet, through which the divine order was manifested and maintained. The Babylonian World, edited by Gwendolyn Lake.
They also conceived the universe as comprising 7 concentric celestial spheres, each ruled by a planetary deity. This model reflected their belief in a layered, orderly cosmos.
Earth, air, fire, and water. These are the 4 elements, the foundations of the physical world. Plato, Timaeus.
In Greek philosophy, particularly in Plato's work, the number 4 is essential in understanding the structure and harmony of the cosmos, resonating with Chaldean thought. Plato associated the number 4 with the fundamental elements and geometric forms, symbolizing stability and completeness.
The movements of the 7 planets are a symphony, each contributing to the harmonious order of the universe. Plato, Timaeus.
In Timaeus, Plato references the 7 planets and their harmonious movements, a concept that aligns with the Chaldean view of celestial order. Plato's cosmology incorporates the idea of 7 planetary spheres, each with a distinct role in maintaining cosmic harmony. This was an obvious reprising of the original Chaldean perspective.
The 4 cardinal virtues are the pillars upon which the soul ascends towards the divine, Plotinus, and needs. The soul's journey through the 7 stages of purification leads it closer to the One, each stage a purification from the material towards the divine. Iamblichus, De Mysteriis.
Neoplatonists, like Plotinus and Iamblichus, expanded on Platonic thought, integrating the sacred numbers 4 and 7 into their metaphysical systems. Neoplatonists emphasized the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, justice, reflecting the number 4's association with stability and moral foundation. They also described a 7-fold path of purification, mirroring the Chaldean 7 heavens or spheres, through which the soul ascends to unity with the divine.
The 4 elements are the very fabric of the cosmos, each one a vessel for the divine will, shaping the material world and guiding spiritual transformation. Corpus Hermeticum.
Hermeticism, a tradition synthesizing elements of Egyptian, Greek, and Chaldean thought, also deeply revered the numbers 4 and 7. These numbers played crucial roles in its cosmology, alchemy, and mystical practices.
Each of the 4 quarters of the world is under the watch of a divine sentinel, harmonizing the forces of nature with the divine plan. Asclepius 25.
In Hermetic thought, the number 4 was integral to understanding both the material and spiritual worlds. Hermetic texts frequently emphasize the 4 classical elements, earth, water, air, and fire, as fundamental to both the physical universe and spiritual processes. Hermetic traditions also speak of 4 cardinal directions, each under the protection of a divine guardian. These directions symbolize the stability and order in the universe.
The soul's passage through the 7 celestial spheres is a journey of purification, shedding the layers of material existence to reunite with the divine source. Poimandres.
The number 7 in Hermeticism is closely linked to astrology and the soul's ascent through the celestial spheres, reflecting a profound synthesis of Chaldean ideas. Hermetic cosmology features the concept of 7 spheres, each governed by a planetary deity. The soul's journey through these spheres symbolizes its purification and return to the divine. In the Egyptian temples, amongst their mystery schools, is where the greatest syncretism of the Chaldean zodiac took place, building the very framework of our modern-day use of the system.
The 4 Gospels stand as the pillars of Christian doctrine, each bearing witness to the life and divinity of Christ from a unique vantage point. Eusebius, Church History. Around the throne, there are 4 living creatures full of eyes, representing the whole of creation, each one a bearer of divine wisdom and power. Revelation 4:6-8.
Early Christianity, inheriting and adapting to the numerological traditions from Judaism and surrounding cultures, also placed great significance on the number 4 and 7. Christian texts and iconography often use the number 4 to denote universality and completeness, consistent with its ancient roots. The New Testament is anchored by the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each representing a distinct perspective on the life and teaching of Jesus. Echoing Ezekiel's vision, the book of Revelation describes 4 living creatures around God's throne, symbolizing the entire creation.
The messages to the 7 churches, the opening of the 7 seals, and the sounding of the 7 trumpets all point to the unfolding of God's divine plan in its completeness. Revelation 1:20, 5:1, 8:2.
The number 7 is pervasive in Christian eschatology, liturgy, and theology, symbolizing divine perfection and completion. In the book of Revelation, the number 7 is prominent, with references to the 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls, all marking stages of the apocalyptic vision.
As for the likeness of their faces, they each had the face of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Ezekiel 1:10.
The Merkabah mystics, drawing on the prophetic vision of Ezekiel, embraced the Chaldean reverence for the number 4. Ezekiel's vision of the divine chariot, or Merkabah, is deeply infused with this symbolism. As we have taught you previously in this section, Ezekiel's vision, the chariot, is borne by 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces. Once again, the man, lion, ox, and eagle, representing the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, and symbolizing the stability and completeness of the divine order. This echoes the Chaldean alignment with the zodiac and the cosmic order. The chariot also has 4 wheels, further emphasizing the stability and balance associated with the number 4.
Heaven is divided into 7 realms, each ascending closer to the divine throne. Sefer, Hekalot.
Jewish mysticism, particularly in the texts related to the Merkabah, also venerates the number 7, reflecting its Chaldean origins. Jewish mystical traditions describe the existence of 7 heavens, each representing a different level of divine reality and spiritual ascent, mirroring the Chaldean 7 celestial spheres. The Qumran community, known for the Dead Sea Scrolls, incorporated the number 4 and 7 into their eschatological and theological frameworks, aligning closely with Chaldean numerology. Texts from Qumran interpret the number 4 in the context of the 4 great empires or kingdoms, prophesied to rise and fall before the end of times. Rachel Elior, my favorite Jewish scholar, spent years studying the Qumran communities and identified the sect of Judaism as the forebearers of the Merkabah mystics, themselves the forebearers to the late practices in Hebrew Kabbalah. As I have explained above, they practiced a form of authentic Hebrew theurgy, although they themselves would not claim it. I want to quote directly here from Rachel's book, The 3 Temples.
The mystical Merkabah tradition evolved from the vision of Ezekiel, son of Buzi, the priest, in which the cherubim and sacred creatures in the earthly and heavenly temples were fused together. Ezekiel envisioned a 4-fold configuration of sacred, multi-faced, winged creatures, which could not be subsumed under any category clearly distinguishable as either earthly or heavenly. The 4-fold nature of these creatures, facing all 4 points of the compass, is stressed again and again. The Merkabah tradition was taken up again in the literature of the secessionist priesthood discovered at Qumran, which is frequently concerned with deciphering the cosmic order, as revealed through harmonies expressed in 4-fold numbers, and 7-fold cycles, in both earthly temple and heavenly sanctuaries. Many of the works of this literature, written in the heat of polemics and controversy towards the end of the Second Temple period, ignore the barriers between heaven and earth, angels and human beings, providing descriptions of visions featuring Merkabah, cherubim and angels, priests and their heavenly counterparts blessing, praising, and singing sacred songs in the supernal sanctuaries according to a fixed, cyclic, cosmic order. But their vision also included a vertical 7-base pattern of sacred heavenly space, linked with the 4 cardinal directions that engender the universe, and its 4-fold and 12-fold divisions. In accordance with the tradition of the 4-faced Merkabah and the diverse spatial elements associated with it, cherubim and sacred creatures, the Garden of Eden and Paradise, Peru Yem and Aperion, both words from a Hebrew root with the connotation of fertility, the eternal plantation, sacred plantation, and plantation of righteousness, and the 7-base sanctuary, the 7 holy precincts, the 7 Hekalot, and the 12 diagonal boundaries. The third overarching component of the secessionist priesthood's vision was the ritual 7-base pattern of the angelic service and sacred song, also associated with the Merkabah tradition, with the sacred service and the songs of the Sabbath sacrifice sung by 7 angelic priesthoods, with the 7 words of wondrous exaltations sung every 7 days in accordance with the weeks of the solar calendar in the 7 supernal sanctuaries. Alongside the 7-based pattern, there was also a 4-fold or 12-fold pattern. The 4 archangels Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael, the 4 faces of the sacred creatures, the 12 heavenly gates, the 12 months and signs of the zodiac, the 12 tribes, the 12 gates of the temple, the 12 stones of the breastplate, the 12 leaders of the community, the 12 diagonal boundaries dividing the space of the universe into 24 parts, correlated with the 24 priestly courses, and so on. This ritual and chronotopic unity bound together sacred time and sacred space in a ritual continuum. It thus amalgamated the concepts of cosmic and earthly time, space, and ritual around one single sacred prototype, all of whose components were interdependent and interlocked. These priestly circles express profound identification with the angels guardians of the covenants and the oaths, the Sabbaths, the weeks, and the festivals. As engraved on the heavenly tablets, guardians of the gates and entrances representing the days, months, and seasons of the year. They describe priestly and angelic liturgical ceremonies, organized in a sevenfold order according to the eternal, sacred solar calendar. They envisaged a community of angelic priests in the world of the Merkabah and in the sanctuary of man, Psalms of the Sabbath Sacrifice, Florilegium, Rachel Ellier, the Three Temples.
These practices of the Qumran communities are so obviously influenced by Chaldean Babylonian concepts that you could almost replace their angels, 7 heavens, 4 directions, 12 divisions of the zodiac, divine experiences, and theurgic practices with those of the Chaldean priests and Babylonian gods and obtain an almost perfect match. Now, this of course would be lost to the details of biblical and cyclic differences to a large degree, but the framework of these practices were not those of the Jewish communities that surrounded them. Like so many of the civilizations that touched the borders of these Babylonian lands, especially in Hellenistic times, they were certainly and obviously deeply influenced. The Babylonians conceived the universe as a series of concentric circles or spheres, with the earth at the center, surrounded by the heavens. This structured view of the cosmos significantly influenced later Greek and Roman thought, contributing to the development of Western cosmological perspectives, especially in the Platonic worldview. The Babylonians envisioned the universe as a structured, hierarchical system governed by divine order. Central to their cosmology were the 3 heavens, each associated with a specific deity and function. The uppermost heaven, the domain Avenu, the sky god and ruler of the gods, represented divine sovereignty, with Anu presiding over the assembly of the gods and cosmic order. This upper heaven embodied the pinnacle of the cosmic hierarchy and eternal laws. The middle heaven, associated with Bel, or Enlil, the god of storms, wind, and kingship, governed the natural world and earthly affairs, including fertility and agriculture. This middle heaven represented power and authority on earth, as well as the cyclic patterns of nature. The lower heaven, the realm of Ea, or Enki, the god of wisdom, magic, and fresh water, controlled waters and subterranean realms, influencing wisdom, crafts, and healing. This lower heaven represented the depths of knowledge and the mysteries of the natural world. The Greeks and Romans adopted the concept of a spherical universe with concentric celestial spheres, as Franz Kuhlmann explains in Astrology and Religion among the Greeks and Romans.
The Greeks and Romans, inheritors of Chaldean knowledge, adopted the concept of a spherical universe with concentric celestial spheres. This view was primarily conveyed through the works of philosophers and astronomers who drew heavily on Babylonian sources. When Iamblichus was introduced to Theurgy, it was limited to an elite caste of Chaldean priests to describe the divinational rites and oracular possessions in the Temple of Bel-Hadad in Apamea, Syria. Gregory Shaw, Hellenic Tantra.
Greek philosophers and astronomers such as Pythagoras, Plato, and later Ptolemy inherited and adapted Babylonian models, blending them with their own observations and philosophical speculations. Plato, modifying the Babylonian concepts of the 3 heavens to fit his philosophical framework, drew from the same 3 concentric circles or spheres. These same heavenly realms were adapted full sail by Iamblichus following after Plato, but he actually moved closer to the Chaldean concepts of the heavenly realms than Plato in the practice of divine theurgy. I will explain Plato's vision of the spheres and then show how Iamblichus, being trained by the Chaldean Babylonian priests of the Temple of Bel-Hadad, modified them back to a more Chaldean theurgic frame. Before we start, let me make clear that the Babylonians themselves at this time, especially those associated with Iamblichus, had adapted Platonic philosophy into their spiritual practices. These priests had as their guide an already Platonic view subscribing to the visionary work held in the Chaldean oracles. The description of the heavenly world above is much older, but Platonism was as much of an influence on them as their cosmology was on it. First, in Plato's cosmology were the realm of forms or ideas. This is the highest and most perfect realm in Platonic thought. It consists of eternal, unchanging, and perfect forms or ideas, which are the true reality. Everything in the physical world is an imperfect copy or reflection of these forms. For the Chaldeans, this first heaven was the assembly of gods and cosmic order. This was adapted back into the world of forms specifically by Iamblichus, who can be said to have subscribed to the more Chaldean way of interpreting this realm than Plato. Then there was the realm of the soul. The human soul exists in a middle realm, capable of understanding and interacting with both the world of the forms and the physical world. The soul is seen as eternal and rational, having the ability to recollect the forms and strive towards higher knowledge and truth. This realm is linked with the intellectual and rational aspects of existence, similar again to the middle heaven of the Chaldeans, where this heaven governed the natural world and earthly affairs. And finally, the physical realm, or the world of becoming. This is the lowest realm in Plato's hierarchy. It consists of the material world we perceive through our senses, characterized by change, imperfection, and temporality. The physical realm is a shadow or reflection of the higher reality of the forms. It is the world of appearances, where things come into being and pass away, never reaching the perfection of the forms. Here, Iamblichus would have taken more of the Chaldean perspective once again. As stated, this realm represented the depths of knowledge and the mysteries of the natural world. In Iamblican Platonism, this world is not just a shadow of the higher forms, but a non-dual, participating material reflection of the whole. Here the forms concretize into material existence, through the Theurgist aligning with the cosmic order, drawing their perfect expression into the world of experience. This would most assuredly be the depths of knowledge and the mysteries of the natural world. The Babylonians perceived the earth as the center of the universe, surrounded by a cosmic ocean, with celestial phenomena seen as direct manifestations of divine will. The creation myths of Babylonian culture, such as the Enuma Elish, illustrate the formation of the earth from the body of the primordial goddess, Tiamat. This narrative underscores the belief that the earth's materiality was derived from divine intervention in cosmic order. As Jean Botero explains in Mesopotamia, Writing, Reasoning, and the Gods, the Babylonians envisioned a universe where the earth and the heavens were inherently connected through divine creation. The earth's material form, its mountains, rivers, and landscapes were all seen as manifestations of the divine order established by the gods. Similarly, Thorkild Jacobson notes in The Treasure of Darkness, a history of Mesopotamian religion, the Babylonians believed that the physical world, including the earth, was shaped and structured by the actions of the gods. The Enuma Elish epic describes how Marduk divided the body of Tiamat to create the heavens and the earth, suggesting that the materiality of the earth was derived from divine intervention in cosmic order. This view is further supported by Wayne Horowitz in Mesopotamian Cosmic Geography, who describes that the gods' actions in the heavens were believed to shape the material world, indicating that the materiality of the earth was deeply intertwined with divine order and cosmic principles. The Greek emphasis on cosmic harmony and order reflects Babylonian influences. As E.C. Krupp notes in Echoes of the Ancient Skies, The Astronomy of Lost Civilizations, the Babylonians viewed the universe as a unified whole, where the heavens reflected the earthly realm. The celestial bodies were seen as manifestations of the gods, and their movements were interpreted as divine messages. Babylonian practices of astrology and divination, where celestial events were interpreted as signs of divine will, were integrated into Greek thought. Francesca Rochberg highlights this connection in the heavenly writing, Divination, Horoscopy, and Astronomy in Mesopotamian Culture. In Babylonian cosmology, the movements and positions of celestial bodies were perceived as reflections of divine intentions and actions. The heavens served as a mirror to the earthly realm, with astronomical phenomena being interpreted as omens that could predict or influence terrestrial events.
The earth was seen as an extension of the divine realm, shaped and influenced by the actions and will of the gods, reflecting a profound interconnectedness between the celestial and terrestrial worlds. The concept of the three heavens, the creation myths emphasizing the divine origin of the Earth's materiality, and the practices of astrology and divination all contributed to shaping Western cosmological perspectives. This influence is evident in the works of Greek philosophers and astronomers who adopted and adapted Babylonian models to develop their own understanding of the cosmos. Through theurgical practices invoking the symbols and powers of the stars, the soul aligns with the divine order, ascending towards unity with the One. Iamblichus, De Mysteriis.
Iamblichus emphasized the role of astrological symbols in theurgical practices, using Chaldean principles to invoke divine powers and facilitate spiritual ascent. The use of planetary symbols in theurgical rites invoked the presence and power of the gods, aligning the practitioner with the cosmic order. Now, just before we return to the Megaverse interpretation, one final word on the creation story of Enuma Elish. It was said that the earth was formed from the splitting of the primordial goddess Tiamat. Half her body encompassed the spherical heavens, and the other the material nature of the generative world. We have spoken about and will continue to speak on the divinatory nature of religious poetics, but this one holds great significance. As we continue to speak on the Megaverse interpretation and its values, keep this myth in mind. This earliest vision of the cosmos is going to surprise you.